God hath introduced man to be a spectator of himself and of his works, and not a spectator only, but also an interpreter of them. Wherefore it is a shame for man to begin and to leave off where the brutes do. Rather he should begin there, and leave off where nature leaves off in us, and that is at contemplation and understanding, and a manner of life that is in harmony with herself. See then that ye die not without being spectators of these things. You journey to Olympia to see the work of Phidias, and each of you holds it a misfortune not to have beheld these things before you die. Whereas when there is no need even to take a journey, but you are on the spot with the works before you, have you no care to contemplate and study these? Will you not then perceive either who you are or unto what end you were born, or for what purpose the power of contemplation has bestowed upon you? But in life there are some things disagreeable and hard to bear. And are there none at Olympia? Have you not scorched by the heat? Are you not cramped for room? Have you not to bathe with discomfort? Are you not drenched when it rains? Have you not to endure the clamor and shouting and such annoyances as these? Well, I suppose you set all this over against the splendor of the spectacle and bear it patiently. What then? Have you not received powers wherewith to endure all that comes to pass? Have you not received greatness of heart, received courage, received fortitude? What care I if I am great of heart, for aught that can come to pass? What shall cast me down or disturb me? What shall seem painful? Shall I not use the power to end for which I received it, instead of moaning and wailing over what comes to pass? If what philosophers say of the kinship of God and men be true, what remains for men to do but as Socrates did? Never, when asked one's country, to answer, I am an Athenian or a Corinthian, but I am a citizen of the world. He that hath grasped the administration of the world, who hath learned that this community, which consists of God and men, is the foremost and mightiest and most comprehensive of all, that from God have descended the germs of life, not to my father only and father's father, but to all things that are born and grow upon the earth, and in a special manner to those endowed with reason, for those only are by their nature fitted to hold communion with God, being by means of reason conjoined with him. Why should not such an one call himself a citizen of the world? Why not a son of God? Why should he fear aught that comes to pass among men? Shall kinship with Caesar or any other of the great at Rome be enough to hedge men around with safety and consideration, without a thought of apprehension, while to have God for our Maker, and Father the kinsman, shall not this set us free from sorrows and fears? I do not think that an old fellow like me need have been sitting here to try and prevent your entertaining abject notions of yourselves, and talking of yourselves in an abject and ignoble way, but to prevent there being by chance among you any such young men as, to recognizing their kindred to the gods, and the bondage in these chains of the body and its manifold necessities, should desire to cast them off as burdens too grievous to be borne, and depart to their true kindred. This is the struggle in which your master and teacher, were he worthy of name, should be engaged. You would come to me and say, Epictetus, we can no longer endure being chained to this wretched body, giving it food and drink and rest and purification. Aye, and for its sake forced to be subservient to this man, and that are not these things indifferent and nothing to us? Is it not true that death is no evil? Are we not in a manner kinsmen of the gods, and have we not come from them? Let us depart thither whence we came. Let us be freed from these chains that confine and press us down. Here are thieves and robbers and tribunals, and they that are called tyrants, who deem that they have after a fashion power over us because of the miserable body and what pertains to it. Let us show them that they have power over none. And to this I reply, friends, wait for God. When he gives the signal and releases you from this service, then depart to him. But for the present endure to dwell in the place wherein he hath assigned you your post. Short indeed is the time of your habitation therein, and easy to those that are thus minded. What tyrant, what robber, what tribunals have any terrors for those who thus esteem the body and all that belong to it as of no account? Stay, depart not rashly hence. Something like that is what should pass between a teacher and ingenious youths. As it is, what does pass? The teacher is a lifeless body, and you are lifeless bodies yourselves. When you have had enough to eat today, you sit down and weep about tomorrow's food. Slave, if you have it, well and good. If not, you will depart. The door is open. Why lament? What further room is there for tears? What further occasion for flattery? Why should one envy another? Why should you stand in awe of them that have much or are placed in power, especially if they be also strong and passionate? Why? What should they do to us? What they can do we will not regard. What does concern us that they cannot do? Who then shall still rule one that is thus minded? Seeing this then, and noting well the faculties which you have, you should say, send now, O God, any trial that thou wilt, although I have means and powers given me by thee to acquit myself with honor through whatever comes to pass. No, but there you sit trembling for fear certain things should come to pass, and moaning and groaning and lamenting over what does come to pass, and then you upbraid the gods. Such meanness of spirit can have but one result, in piety. Yet God has not only given us these faculties by means of which we may bear everything that comes to pass without being crushed or depressed thereby, but like a good king and father, he has given us this without let or hindrance, placed wholly at our own disposition without reserving to himself any power of impediment or restraint. Though possessing all these things free and all your own, you do not use them. You do not perceive what is you have received, nor whence it comes, but sit moaning and groaning. Some of you blind to the giver, making no acknowledgement to your benefactor, others basely giving themselves to complaints and accusations against God. Yet what faculties and powers you possess for attaining courage and greatness of heart, I can easily show you what you have for upbraiding and accusation. It is for you to show me. How did Socrates bear himself in this regard? How else then as became one who was fully assured that he was the kinsman of the gods? If God has made that part of his own nature which he served, severed from himself and gave to us, liable to be hindered or constrained either by himself or any other, he would not have been God, nor would he have been taking care of us as he ought. If you choose, you are free. If you choose, you need blame no man, accuse no man. All things will be at once according to your mind and according to the mind of God. Petrification is of two sorts. There is petrification of the understanding, and also the sense of shame. This happens when a man obstinately refuses to acknowledge plain truths and persists in maintaining what is self-contradictory. Most of us dread mortification of the body and would spare no pains to escape anything of that kind. But of mortification of the soul we are utterly heedless. With regard, indeed, to the soul, if a man is in such a state as to be incapable of following or understanding anything, I grant you, we do think him in a bad way. But mortification of the sense of shame and modesty, we go so far as to doubt of strength of mind.
Wix is your platform to perform on.
If you have assumed a character beyond your strength, you have played a poor figure in that, and neglected one that is within your powers. Fellow, you have come to blows at home with a slave. You have turned the household upside down and thrown the neighborhood into confusion. Do you come to me then with airs of assumed modesty? Do you sit down like a sage and criticize my explanation of the readings, and whatever idle babble you say has come into my head? Have you come full of envy and dejected because nothing is sent you from home, and while the discussion is going on, do you sit brooding on nothing but how your father or your brother are disposed towards you? What are they saying about me here? About me there? At this moment they imagine I am making progress and saying he will return perfectly omniscient. I wish I could become omniscient before I return, but that would be very troublesome. No one sends me anything. The baths at Nicopolis are dirty. Things are wretched at home and wretched here. Then they say nobody is any the better for the school. Who comes to the school with a sincere wish to learn, to submit his principles to correction and himself to treatment? Who, to gain a sense of his wants? Why, then be surprised if you carry home from the school exactly what you bring into it. Epictetus, I have often come desiring to hear you speak, and you have never given me any answer. Now, if possible, I entreat you, say something to me. Is there, do you think, replied Epictetus, an art of speaking as of other things? If it is to be done skillfully and with profit to the hearer, yes. And are all profited by what they hear, or only some among them? So that it seems there is an art of hearing as well as of speaking. To make a statue needs skill. To view a statue aright needs skill also, admitted. And I think all will allow that one who proposes to hear philosophers speak needs a considerable training in hearing. Is that not so? Then tell me, on what subject are you able to hear me? Why on good and evil? The good and evil of what? A horse, an ox? No, of a man. Do we know then what man is? What his nature is? That is the idea we have of him. And are our ears practiced in any degree on the subject? Nay, do you understand what nature is? Can you follow me in any degree when I say that I shall have to use demonstration? Do you understand what demonstration is? What true or false is? Must I drive you to philosophy? Show me what good I am to do by discoursing with. Rouse my desire to do so. The sight of the pasture it loves stirs in the sheep the desire to feed. Show it a stone or a bit of bread and it remains unmoved. Thus we must also have certain natural desires, and one that moves us to speak when we find a listener that is worth his salt, one that himself stirs the spirit. But if he sits by like a stone or a tuft of grass, how can he rouse a man's desire? Then you will say nothing to me. I can only tell you this, that one who knows not who he is and to what end he was born, what kind of world this is, and with whom he is associated therein, one who cannot distinguish good and evil, beauty and foulness, truth and falsehood, will never follow reason in shaping his desires and impulses and repulsions, nor yet innocent denial or suspension of judgment, but will in one word go about deaf and blind, thinking himself to be somewhat, and then he is in truth of no account. Is there anything new in all this? Is not this ignorance the cause of all the mistakes and mischances of men since the human race began? This is all I have to say to you, and even this against the grain. Why? Because you have not stirred my spirit, for what can I see in you to stir me? As a spirited horse will stir a judge of horses? Your body that you maltreat, your dress that is luxurious, your behavior, your look, nothing whatever. When you want to hear a philosopher, do not say you say nothing to me. Only show yourself worthy or fit to hear, and then you will see how you will move the speaker. And now, when you see brothers apparently good friends and living in accord, do not immediately pronounce anything upon their friendship, though they should affirm it with an oath, though they should declare for us to live apart is a thing impossible. For the heart of a bad man is faithless, unprincipled, inconstant. Now overpowered by one impression, now by another. Ask not the usual questions. Were they born of the same parents, reared together and under the same tutor? But ask this only, in what they place their real interest, whether in outward things or in the will. If in outward things, call them not friends, any more than faithful, constant, brave, or free. Call them not even human beings, if you have any sense. But should you hear that these men hold it good to lie only in the will, only in rightly dealing with the things of sense, take no more trouble to inquire whether they are father and son, or brothers, or comrades of long standing, but should of this one thing pronounce as boldly that they are friends, as that they are faithful and just. For where else can friendship be found than where modesty is, where there is an interchange of things fair and honest, and of such only? No man can rob us of our will, no man can lord it over that. When disease and death overtake me, I would fain be found engaged in the task of liberating mine own will from the assaults of passion, from hindrance, from resentment, from slavery. Thus would I fain be found employed, so that I may say to God, have I in aught transgressed thy commands? Have I in aught perverted the faculties, the senses, the natural principles that thou didst give me? Have I ever blamed thee, or found fault with thine administration? When it was thy good pleasure, I fell sick, and so did other men, but my will consented. Because it was thy pleasure, I became poor, but my heart rejoiced. No power in the state was mine, because thou wouldst not such power I never desired. Hast thou ever seen me of more doleful countenance? On that account have I not ever drawn nigh unto thee with cherished, cheerful look, waiting upon thy commands, attentive to thy signals. Wilt thou that I now depart from the great assembly of men? I go, I give thee all things that thou hast deemed me worthy to take part with thee in this assembly, to behold thy works, to comprehend this thine administration. Such I would were the subject of my thoughts, my pen, my study, when death overtakes me. Seemeth it nothing to you, never to accuse, never to blame either good or man, to wear ever the same countenance in going forth as in coming in? This was the secret of Socrates, yet he never said that he knew or taught anything. Who amongst you makes this his aim? Were it indeed so, he would gladly endure sickness, hunger, aye, death itself. How are we constituted by nature to be free, to be noble, to be modest? For what other living thing is capable of blushing or of feeling the impression of shame, and to subordinate pleasure to the ends for which nature designed us, as a handmaid and a minister, in order to call forth our activity, in order to keep us constant to the path prescribed by nature? The husband deals with land, physicians and trainers with the body, the wise man with his own mind. Which of us does not admire what Lycurgus the Spartan did? The young citizen had put out his eye and been handed over to him by the people to be punished at his own discretion. Lycurgus abstained from all vengeance, but on the contrary instructed him and made a good man of him, producing him in the public, in the theater. He said to the astonished Spartans, I received this young man at your hands full of violence and wanton insolence. I restore him to you in his right mind and fit to serve his country. The money changer may not reject Caesar's coin, nor may the seller of herbs, but must, when once the coin is shown, deliver what is sold for it, whether he will or no. So is it also with the soul. Once the good appears, it attracts towards itself, evil repels. But a clear and certain impression of the good the soul will never reject any more than men do Caesar's coin, and this hangs every impulse alike of man and God. As to its common censors, Epictetus replied, as that may be called a common ear which distinguishes only sounds, while that which distinguishes musical notes is not common, but produced by training. So there are certain things which men not entirely perverted see by the natural principle common to all. Such a constitution of the mind is called common sense. Canst thou judge men? then make us imitators of thyself, as Socrates did. Do this, do not do that, else will I cast thee into prison. This is not governing men like reasonable creatures. Say rather, as God hath ordained, so do, else thou wilt suffer chastisement and loss. Askest thou what lost? None other than this, to have left undone what thou shouldst have done, to have lost the faithfulness, the reverence, the modesty that is in thee. Greater loss than this seek not to find. His son is dead. What has happened? His son is dead. Nothing more, nothing. His ship is lost. What has happened? His ship is lost. He has been haled to prison. What has happened? He has been haled to prison. But that any of these things are misfortunes to him. He is in addition with every one makes of his own, but you say God is unjust in this way. Why? For having given thee endurance and greatness of soul, for having made such things to be no evils, for placing happiness within thy reach even when enduring them, for opening unto thee a door when things make not for thy good. Depart, my friend, and find no fault. You are sailing to Rome, and you tell me to obtain the post of governor of Gnosis. You are not content to stay at home with the honors you had before. You want something on a larger scale, more conspicuous. But when did you ever undertake a voyage for the purpose of reviewing your own principles and getting rid of any of them that proved unsound? Whom did you ever visit for that object? What time did you ever set yourself for that? What age run over the times of your life by yourself if you are ashamed before me? Did you examine your principles when a boy? Did you not do everything just as you do now? Or when you were a stripling, attending the school of oratory and practicing the art yourself, what did you ever imagine you lacked? And when you were a young man, entered upon public life and were pleading causes and making a name, who any longer seemed equal to you? And at what moment would you have endured another examining your principles and proving that they were unsound? What then am I to say to you, help me in this matter? You cry, for that I have no rule, and neither did you, if that was your object, come to me as a philosopher, but as you might have gone to an herb sabbler or a cobbler. What do philosophers have rules for then? Why, that whatever may betide, our ruling faculty may be as nature would have it, and so remain. Think you this a small matter? Not so, but the greatest thing there is. Well, does it need but a short time? Can it be grasped by a passer-by? Grasp it if you can. Then you will say, yes, I met Epictetus. Just as you might a statue or a monument, you saw me. That is all. But a man who meets a man is one who learns the other's mind and lets him see his in return. Then my mind, show me yours, and then go and say that you met me. Let us try each other. If I have any wrong principle, rid me of it. If you have, out with it. That is what meeting a philosopher means. Not so. You think this is only a flying visit. While we are hiring the ship, we can see Epictetus too. Let us see what he has to say. Then on leaving you cry out on Epictetus for a worthless fellow, provincial and barbarous of speech. What else indeed did you come to judge of? Whether you will or not, you are poorer than I. What then do I lack? What you have not, constancy of mind, such as nature would have it be. Tranquility. Patron or no patron, what care I? But you do care. I am richer than you. I am not racked with anxiety as to what Caesar may think of me. Fled none on that account. This is what I have instead of vessels of gold and silver. Your vessels may be of gold, but your reason, your principles, your accepted views, your inclinations, your desires are of earthenware. To you, all you have seems small. To me, all I have seems great. Your desire is insatiable. Mine is satisfied. See children thrusting their hands into a narrow neck jar and striving to pull out the nuts and figs it contains. They fill the land, they cannot pull it out again, and then they fall through tears. Let go a few of them, and then you can draw out the rest. You too, let your desire go. Covet not many things, and you will obtain. Pittacus, wronged by one whom he had it in his power to punish, let him go free, saying, forgiveness is better than revenge. The one shows native gentleness, the other savagery. My brother ought not to have treated me thus, true, but he must see to that. However he may treat me, I must deal rightly by him. This is what lies with me, what none can hinder. Nevertheless, a man should also be prepared to be sufficient unto himself, to dwell with himself alone, even as God dwells with himself alone, shares his repose with none, and considers the nature of his own administration, intent upon such thoughts as are meet unto himself. So should we also be able to converse with ourselves, to need none else beside, to sigh for no distraction, to bend our thoughts upon the divine administration, and how we stand related to all us, to observe how human accidents touched us of old, and how they touch us now, what things they are that still have power to hurt us, and how they may be cured or removed to perfect what needs perfecting, as reason would direct. If a man has frequent intercourse with others, either in the way of conversation, entertainment, or simple familiarity, he must either become like them or change them to his own fashion. A live coal placed next to a dead one will either kindle that or be quenched by it. Such being the risk, it is well to be cautious in admitting intimacies of this sort, remembering that one cannot rub shoulders with a soot-stained man without sharing the soot oneself. What will you do, supposing the talk turns on gladiators, or horses, or prize fighters, or what is worse, on persons, condemning this and that, approving the others? Or suppose a man sneers or jeers or shows a malignant temper. Has any among us the skill of the lute player who knows at the first touch which strings are out of tune and sets the instrument right? Has any of you such a power as Socrates had in all his intercourse with men of winning them over to his own convictions? Nay, but you must needs be swayed hither and thither by the uninstructed. How comes it then that they prove so much stronger than you? Because they speak from the fullness of the heart. Their low corrupt views are their real convictions, whereas your fine sentiments are but from the lips outwards. That is why they are so nerveless and dead. It turns one's stomach to listen to your exaltations and hear of your miserable virtue, that you prate up and down. Thus it is that the vulgar prove too strong for you. Everywhere strength, everywhere victory awaits your conviction. In general, any methods of discipline applied to the body which tend to modify its desires or repulsions are good for aesthetic ends, but if done for display, they betray at once a man who keeps an eye on an outward show, who has an ulterior purpose and is looking for spectators to shout, "Oh, what a great man!" This is why Apollonius so well said, if you are bent upon a little private discipline, wait till you are choking with heat some day, and take a mouthful of cold water and spit it out again and tell no man. Study how to give as one that is sick, that thou mayest hereafter give as one that is whole. Fast, drink water, only abstain altogether from desire, that thou mayest hereafter conform thy desire to reason. Thou wouldst do good unto men, then show them by thine own example what kind of men philosophy can make, and cease from foolish trifling. Eating, do good to them that eat with thee, drinking to them that drink with thee, yield unto all, give way, and bear with them. Thus shalt thou do them good, but vent not upon them thine own evil humour. Even as bad actors cannot sing alone, but only in chorus, so some cannot walk alone. Man, if thou art aught, strive to walk alone, and hold converse with thyself instead of skulking in the chorus. At length think, look around thee, bestir thyself, that thou mayest know thou art. You would fain be victor at the Olympic Games, you say, yes, but weigh the conditions, weigh the consequences then, and then only lay to your hand. If it be for your profit, you must live by rules, submit to diet, abstain from dainty meats, exercise your body perforce at stated hours. In heat or in cold, drink no cold water, nor it may be wine. In a word, you must surrender yourself wholly to your trainer, as though to a physician. Then in the hour of contest, you will have to delve the ground. It may chance dislocate an arm, sprain an ankle, gulp down abundance of yellow sand, be scourged with the whip, and with all this sometimes lose the victory. Count the cost, and then, if your desire still holds, try the wrestler's life. Else let me tell you that you will be behaving like a pack of children, playing now at wrestlers, now at gladiators, presently falling to trumpeting and onto stage playing, when the fancy takes them for what they have seen. And you are even the same, wrestler, gladiator, philosopher, orator, all by turns, and none of them with your whole soul. Like an ape, you mimic what you see, to one thing constant never. The thing that is familiar charms no more. This is because you never undertook aught with due consideration, nor after strictly testing and viewing it from every side. No, your choice was thoughtless. The glow of your desire had waxed cold. Friend, bethink you first what it is that you would do, and then what your own nature is able to bear. Would you be a wrestler? Consider your shoulders, your thighs, your loins. Not all men are formed to the same end. Think you to be a philosopher while acting as you do? Think you can go on thus eating, thus drinking, giving way in like manner to wrath and to displeasure? Nay, you must watch, you must labor and overcome certain desires. Quit your familiar friends, submit to be despised by your slave, to be held in derision by them that meet you, to take the lower place in all things in office and positions of authority in courts of law. Weigh these things fully, and then, if you will, lay to your hand, if as the price of these things you would gain freedom, tranquility, and passionless serenity. He that hath no musical instruction is a child in music. He that hath no letters is a child in learning. He that is untaught is a child in life. Can any profit be derived from these men? Aye, from all. What, even from a reveler? Why, tell me what profit a wrestler gains from him who exercises him beforehand. The very greatest he trains me in the practice of endurance, of controlling my temper, of gentle ways, you deny it. What, the man who lays hold of my neck and disciplines loins and shoulders does me good, while he that trains me to keep my temper does me none. This is what it means, that knowing how to gain advantage from men is my neighbor bad. Bad to himself, but good to me. He brings my good temper, my gentleness into play. Is my father bad? Bad to himself, but good to me. This is the rod of Hermes. Touch what you will with it, they say, and it becomes gold. Nay, but bring what you will, and I will transmute it into good. Bring sickness, bring death, bring poverty, and reproach, bring trial for life. All these things through the rod of Hermes shall be turned to profit. Till then, these sound opinions have taken firm root in you, and you have gained a measure of strength for your security. I counsel you to be cautious in associating with the uninstructed, else whatever impressions you receive upon the tablets of your mind in the school will day by day melt and disappear. Waxen sun withdraw then somewhere far from the sun while you have these waxen sentiments. We must approach this matter in a different way. It is great and mystical. It is no common thing, nor given to every man. Wisdom alone, it may be, will not suffice for the care of youth. Man needs also a certain measure of readiness and aptitude for the office, aye, and certain bodily qualities, and above all to be counselled of God himself to undertake this post, even as he counselled Socrates to fill the post of one who confutes error, signing to Diogenes the royal office of high reproof, and to Zeno that of positive instruction. Whereas you would fain set up for a physician provided with nothing but drugs, where and how they should be applied you neither know nor care. If what charms you is nothing but abstract principles, sit down and turn them over quietly in your mind, but never dub yourself a philosopher, nor suffer others to call you so. Rather say, he is in error, for my desires, my impulses are unaltered. I give in my adhesion to what I did before, nor has my mode of dealing with the things of sense undergone any change. When a friend inclined to cynic views asked Epictetus what sort of person a true cynic should be, requesting a general sketch of the system, he answered, we will consider that at leisure. At present I content myself with saying this much. If a man put his hands to so weighty a matter without God, the wrath of God abides upon him. That which he covets, but bring upon him public shame, and even on finding himself in a well-ordered house, does a man step forward and say to himself, I must be master here. Else the lord of that house takes notice of it, and seeing him insolently giving orders, drags him forth and chastises him. So it is also in this great city of the world. Here also is there a lord of the house who orders all things. Thou art the sun. In thine orbit thou hast power to make the year and the seasons, to bid the fruits and the earth grow and increase, the winds arise and fall. Thou canst in due measure cherish with thy warmth the frames of men. Go make thy circuit, and thus minister unto all, from the greatest to the least. Thou canst lead a host against Troy, be Agamemnon. Thou canst meet Hector in single combat, be Achilles. But had Thersites stepped forward and claimed the chief command, he had been met with a refusal, or obtained it only to his own shame and confusion of face before a cloud of witnesses. Others may fence themselves with walls and houses when they do such deeds as these and wrap themselves in darkness. They have many a device to hide themselves. Another may shut his door and station one before his chamber to say, if any comes, he has gone forth. He is not at leisure. But a true cynic will have none of these things. Instead of them, he must wrap himself up in modesty, else he will bring about himself to shame and naked under the open sky. That is his house, that is his door, that is the slave that guards his chamber, that is his darkness. Death, let it come when it will, but whether it smite but a part or the whole, fly, you tell me fly. But whither shall I fly? Can any man cast me beyond the limits of the world? It may not be, and whithersoever I go, there shall I still find sun, moon, and stars. There shall I find dreams and omens and converse with the gods.
Hey, it's me, your skin. Some cleansers get us clean, but take my moisture. I'm craving a balanced clean with CeraVe. CeraVe cleansers, developed with dermatologists, help me maintain my moisture balance. With hyaluronic acid, known to attract moisture, plus 3 essential ceramides to help restore my natural barrier. With CeraVe, cleansing can be about giving, not just taking, so we can be a healthy feeling clean. CeraVe Clean.
CeraVe cleansers from the #1 dermatologist recommended skincare brand.
Miami seems like a good place to reflect upon greed. I was watching a baby feed, a very young infant feed. Now that's pure greed. Pure greed. It's just, there is no self-consciousness about it at all. And then we get socialized, and we mix greed with a liberal dosage of guilt and shame to control our greed. And then later we mix it with rationalizations, a rational structure to control our greed using our intellect. So when we are a controlled greed instrument, we are called socialized. We still have the greed. We still want what we want when we want it. Because when we're getting just what we want when we want it, we have a certain feeling of, right on. You know when you're really thirsty and there's no water and you got a long distance to go and you finally get to a point where there's a cool glass of water. Ooh. Or you need to go to the bathroom and you're on a long bus trip. That moment of getting just what it is that you wanted. It's a moment when you merge. You were somebody wanting the water. It's like with sex, it's very clear. You want the orgasm. You think, here it comes, here it comes, here it comes. And then there it goes, there it goes, there it goes. But at the moment, nobody's thinking anything. Nobody's thinking, this is it. There isn't anybody there to think anything. But that lasts about that long, unless you can get it out to there, so master. Of the selfless moment, the moment when you're not busy being somebody doing something, the moment of flow. Now, the culture's been changing, and we're throwing off a lot of our guilt and shame. So what happens then? Everybody tries to come back to basic greed, to get what they want when they want it. When you're hungry, you eat. Then you see people swelling bigger and bigger and bigger, just out of pure greed. More and more ease, more and more comfort, more luxury. More. If I get just a little bit more, it'll be just enough. And for those moments, it is. It is enough. The problem is that those are moments in time. And a moment later, they're gone. You're all masters of going up and coming down. You know how to get up there, and you also know how to get down. And most of you, no matter how hard you push, come down. You buy a new car, you get behind the driver's wheel, get that rush. Just the fantasy I had. Here it is, $4,000 later. I got it. You zoom down the road, the moment. A few days later, there's a squeak. New dance. The moment is past. People who are designing their lives around getting more try to get those moments in closer and closer together. Because if you can get them in close enough, you may not notice the space between them. So right in the middle of dinner, like, what's for dessert? You're in dessert, take out some coffee. Drink the coffee, let's go to the movies. You're in the middle of the movies, what do we do after the movies? Let's get an ice cream soda. Ice cream soda, let's take a walk. Taking the walk, what do you say? This is great, let's go to bed. Go to bed, what's in the refrigerator? And so it goes, on and on and on. Always just getting ready for the next one to make sure there's not going to be a space between the one you're in now. Because, God forbid, there should be a space. And the fantasy of the society is that you have enough money and enough power, you'll be able to do it. You'll be able to bring it off. You get them in so tight, it'll just be one whoosh. Right? It'll just be jetting to Tokyo for breakfast, all the way, right? That's it. But television, as an obvious medium, has not somewhat of a hole in that fantasy. Because it confronts you on the screen, right between your feet, in your own bedroom, with faces of those people who made it. And if you look in close, the vibration often isn't one you want. It's as if I made it by everything society said I should do to make it. And where is the pot of gold? What's wrong? But why worry? The sun will be up tomorrow. It'll be warm and toasty. I'll just worry about how to earn a living, keep my kids alive, get a little sun, have a little leisure, smoke a little grass. It's okay. I'll fill. But there is a moment when you don't want to fill anymore. When the futility of your predicament of grabbing at things that are in time becomes too apparent. When that happens for an individual, he experiences despair. And in the midst of that despair is the seed of the next stage of his growth of awareness. You are here in this room, almost without exception, because you recognize what I am talking about. That even if you are in the midst of collecting it all, of having good home, good family, good insurance policies, good security, good fun, good sun, good nature, good social responsibility, good political activism, good health food, good clothes, good friends. Back inside of you is saying, what is it back in here that's yearning for something else? What is it? Is this just neurosis? Are we just a collective group of neurotics? We may well be, by the way. This may be the dissatisfaction of an affluent society, grasping at straws. Or it may be that we are pseudopods. We are those things that go out from the amoeba. We are the leading edge of a shift of consciousness in which we are now reaching for something more profound, deeper in our own beings, deeper in the universe. Obvious shifts. For example, in this group, many of you are shifting from identifying with that feeling towards the universe of my job is to master and control my environment, shifting to my work is to hear and flow with and be a part of my universe. Now that's an entirely different ego structure. That is a shift in consciousness. That is the answer to the ecological imbalances that come from man's intellect attempting to control nature. That's called in Chinese philosophy the Tao, the flow, the harmony, being in tune with, being an instrument of the universe instead of a master of it. But what a humble ego to be willing to do that. If that were Henry Kissinger, he would have to listen instead of just sending. That's the difference between a politician and a statesman. That's the difference between a knowledgeable person and a wise man. We are collectively in training to become wise persons. A wisdom that is going to be reflected in our beings. Our actions are going to reflect these shifts in consciousness that we are about at this moment. Now, actually, who you are has another level of significance that some of you will find difficult to hear, others will hear comfortably. And it concerns issues of reincarnation and karma, of who you are. See, at one level, you think you are somebody sitting in North Miami Beach High School. And you think you are a man or a woman or a boy or a girl, or some mixture. But you have so many levels of identity, so many levels of identity. Why do you pick that particular reality to cling to? Because it's being fed by your senses and by your thinking mind. Until your eye be single, until you only see with the third eye, you are hooked on these eyes, these ears, this nose, this mouth, this skin, these thoughts. And that creates which reality? And they're all tuned to a certain frequency. And on that frequency, you are sitting in North Miami Beach High School. But who I see you to be is, for the most part, very different than who you think you are. I've been through the example many times. Many of you have heard the example, but it's such a vivid image that we can repeat it and work with it. It's a good one. It's the one of the flipping of the switch by the eyes, your perceptual apparatus, your receiving set. See, if you tune into a channel, let's say channel 2 on your television set, your eyes. What you see when you look out at the world is the physical reality. You see man, woman, big, little, old, young, dark, light, bald, hairy, developed, undeveloped, mole, bent nose, this, that, whatever. Right? If you're preoccupied with that in yourself, that's what you see in everybody else. If you think you've got a funny looking nose, what you notice when you walk down the street is everybody's nose. It's bizarre. Right? If you think you don't have the right clothes, all you notice are people's clothes. Right? The physical reality. If you are horny, what you notice in all people are who's makeable, who is a competitor with you for who is makeable, and who is irrelevant. Okay? And that's the reality. That's what you see. That's watching all the girls go by on the street corner, or the boys go by in this magazine. One more. Flip. Now, when you look at another person, what you see is as if two mirrors were placed facing each other with nothing in between. You see itself looking at itself, looking at itself, looking at itself, infinitely. For you have moved to the plane of the ancient one, of the one, where there's only one of us here. In that reality, there is one of us here talking to itself. We are making believe we are the many. We are playing as if we're many so we can play out this dance. We are all in drag because when you rip off the mask, there's only one of it. Right? And I am talking to myself. Now, the minute you left the psychological, the minute you left that second channel, went to the astral plane, you immediately left North Miami Beach High School. Okay. Which of these realities is you? Who are you? Who do you think you are? Just to complete the game, we'll just go one more. One more flip. You disappear. I disappear. The television receiver disappeared. We have just entered into the formless, called the void. Not nothing. That's something. These are all relative realities. Physical, psychological, astral, soul, one. All of those are relative realities in form. They are all relatively real. No one of them is absolutely real. If you try to stand in one of them, you're going to have to deny all the rest of them. And if you are standing in one of them and saying, who I am is my psychological self, and then suddenly you have a dream or a vision, or your consciousness alters, you say, I was out of my mind, or I had a hallucination. In the New York Times last year, there was an article in the Sunday Supplement, a study done on mysticism in America. And it said 2/5 of the population of the United States have had a transcendent mystical experience. That's an enormous number of people who have gone outside of their ego structure. A sampling of those 2/5, 85% said it was the most profound experience of my life and I never want to have another one. Can you hear that? Because it upset the apple cart. Because if you want to hold on to your neurosis and suddenly you've been catapulted out to where you are experiencing oneness with the universe, what happened to your neurosis? And if you built a whole game plan around your neurosis, you are left with nothing, nowhere to stand. So it is true that most people in society are pushing away experiences that indicate that they have an identity on other planes of reality in order to hold tightly to the plane they are comfortable with. Now, what is liberation within that context? A liberated being is somebody who has moved out of the reality that they thought was absolute initially in their life into another reality and another reality and another reality. And they are liberated from being stuck in any single reality. Okay? Somebody we call psychotic is in a reality other than the one that, say, 3 psychiatrists agree to. Okay? Like the example I gave, I think, in The Only Dance There Is, where I visited my brother who was thinking he was Christ and the psychiatrist who thought he was a psychiatrist, right? And they both were in a room together, convinced the other one was insane. Yeah. 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 But the insanity is clinging to any reality. I didn't say functioning in any reality, I said clinging to any reality. A conscious being functions in all realities. Can't you have your astral identity and your physical identity and your psychological identity and your spiritual identity? And your identity is the one? And you are beyond identity, all here and now? That's what the game is. Would John Morley call his house, please? Who you are in an evolutionary sense is somebody who in this very lifetime has begun to awaken to your predicament of a limited reality. That's it. If you think of the image of a clock, 12 o'clock, perfect harmony in the universe. Perfect flow. A metaphor you can work with about 12 o'clock, Garden of Eden. Everything is in relation to everything else. There is no separateness. Within that perfection, God has said man has choice. That's part of the perfection. Choice to do what? Choice to act in opposition to the will of God, in opposition to the flow, to the harmony. Okay? If you cannot get into an emotional reaction to the Garden of Eden story, it will teach you a great deal at this moment. Before eating the apple, which is the apple of knowledge, in which man goes into dualism, in which he then knows, but no longer is. He has separated himself in order to know. He wants to be God. He wants to know, not just be. Following eating of the apple, God finds him covering his genitals with a fig leaf. And God says to him and to Eve, "Who told you you were naked?" Where did separateness come from? Where did shame come from? Why do you even think you are separate? Because the minute you start to think about something, you have separated yourself from the flow. Now be careful, because I'm not knocking intellect. I'm merely doing what Vivekananda talked about, shifting the intellect from being a master to being a servant. Okay? 1201, you ate the apple. You ate the apple, by the way. All right. Now you suddenly look around and you see it all, but you're no longer part of it all. You are experiencing your own separateness, the beginning of alienation. Okay. You are cast out of the Garden of Eden, out of the flow, out of the self-consciousness flow. From 1201 to 559, birth after birth after birth after birth, you are born into your separateness again and again and again, and each time you spend your life trying to optimize the control with your separateness in order to re-experience what you had at 12 o'clock, but still keep your own sense of separateness. In other words, you want to be God and have your own heaven. That's what somebody in Miami Beach wants, is to be God and have his own heaven, the way he wants it. $5.59. Everything you have done, birth after birth after birth after birth, and you know how many births we're talking about? I mean, I can't do enough after births. Buddha gives the example. Remember this in story? Buddha said, if you took a mountain that was the width, the length, that it would take an oxen to walk in one day, which is about 6 miles. It's 6 miles long, 6 miles wide, and 6 miles high. And every 100 years, a bird flies by the mountain with a silk scarf in its beak, and it runs the scarf over the top of the mountain. In the length of time it would take for the silk scarf to wear down the mountain, that's how long. Birth, death, birth, death, birth, death. If you want to get a little sense of the time, just look at how many times you've blinked your eyes since you walked in here. Those are like lifetimes. It's just the time change, time shift. This whole thing you're involved in, this is the big one, right? You've said that for the last 10,000 of them, okay? This is the one I'm going to do it, right? Just one more pizza, right? And there it is, another birth, another pizza, right? Start another dimension of this evening. For those of you that know these words are birds, sit straight and just breathe into your heart and keep rising on the energy in this room, all right? Let the words flow in and out. You don't have to turn off that reality to do the other thing, but you can go beyond the words here too. The words are to keep the intellect calm, so another process can go on tonight. $6 despair. I have tried every strategy I know in order to master the universe and be in control of it and recreate the Garden of Eden, and I can't do it. Despair. Despair is the prerequisite for awakening. 6:01, right in the middle of a birth, you began to awaken. Now, why do I say in the middle of a birth? Because between births, you have awakened each time, only to go to sleep again as you took birth. But often you resisted the awakening between births. See, a person, let's say at 7:30 or 8 o'clock, who's already awakening during a birth, is different than somebody at 4 o'clock who didn't awaken at all during the birth, who denied all awakening, was the 85% who said, I never want to have that experience again. The person at 4:30 dies. They're dying. They say, save me, I don't want to die, I don't want to die, I don't want to die. Do whatever you need to do, keep me from dying, and then they're dead. And a moment later, a voice says to them, welcome. And they say, if I'm hearing a voice saying welcome, I guess I didn't die. And the voice says, no, you did die. For a person at 4:30, utter confusion. That confusion can last until the next birth. It's called purgatory. 8:30, however, you're dying, I don't want to die, I don't want to die. You still don't want to die at 8:30. So you don't not give a damn till around 11:15. At 8:30, I don't want to die, I don't want to die. Save me, you're dead. Welcome. I guess I didn't die. No, you did die. At that moment, those moments of awakening you had during your previous birth suddenly flick over into figure instead of into background, and you say, far out. All that stuff that happened to me was real. And then you're wide open, and then you are a collaborator in the preparation for your next round. You work with the cosmic karmic council in the realm of the astral Meshuggahs in planning the next dance. But there are more surprises in store yet. For as you get up near 11 o'clock, you're working out all of your karma and you're awake during most of your birth. Get to 11:59. New choice. 11:59. At that point, you can merge back into, give up the last vestige of separateness that's left, which is merely the thought of I. That's all that's left, the thought of I. Or you can push against the final merge and stay in form. And why would you stay in form? Not because of your personal desires any longer, because you don't have any. You stay in form because of what in Tibetan Buddhism is called the Bodhisattva. You stay in form because of the suffering of all sentient beings. That's what a guru is. It's a being who is staying in form in order to relieve the suffering of other beings. 11:59. Where are you? 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock? You're at least past 6 o'clock or you wouldn't be in this room. 7:30, 9, 10:30, 11:45. Are these moments on the clock births and deaths? Could you go through the entire clock in one birth? There is no fixed time, no time units. It's the karmic clock. And the final realization at 11:59 is that the entire clock was an illusion. For at that moment, path and pilgrim and goal merge into one. And you see that the entire clock was within the illusion of time. When Buddha says you already are the Buddha, meaning you already are fully enlightened, you're merely busy thinking you're not. And the entire sadhana, the entire path, is the path of awakening you out of your illusion of separateness to acknowledge who you already are. Thus, nobody teaches you anything. They merely remind you. And that what you are seeking is not out there. It doesn't lie in me as opposed to lying in you. The only difference is that I'm not as attached to who I think I am as you are. The act of meditation is the act of transcending your models or molds of who you are to recognize yourself. What is it you want this lifetime? What is it you want? Somebody at 4:30 wants more pleasure. Somebody at 8:30 wants to return to the source, wants to know God, wants to become enlightened, wants to be free, wants to be realized, wants to be liberated from suffering. A person at 8:30 recognizes Buddha's Four Noble Truths, that the cause of suffering is clinging or attachment, and says, help me free myself from clinging and attachment so that I might end suffering. Let me be free. At 4:30, you try to optimize pleasure and minimize pain. You try to get high and avoid the low. At 8:30, you say, everything in my life, the highs and the lows, are all grist for the mill of going home. I will eat it all. And it's even farther out than that, because at that point, your suffering becomes functional for your awakening. Your suffering literally becomes grace. That's a heavy one. At that point, when you get caught in anger far out, it's showing you where you're clinging, and you're more interested in getting done with clinging than you are just getting high again. Then you are ready to take life as it comes towards you without defining this but not that. I want a new Cadillac, but I don't want cancer. Okay. By 10 o'clock, you're ready to say, new Cadillac. Cancer. Life. Death. Pleasure. Decay. Because all of it is seen only in relation to that television channel in which the soul is going home. And everything on all the planes is grist for the mill of the process of awakening. You use it all. And your life at this moment is an absolutely perfect statement. Perfect. Most of you sit around saying, if only, whatever. If only I were 20 years younger, 20 years older, richer, poorer, more beautiful, a different sex, whatever. If only. By around 9 o'clock, that's all over. You're looking at just how it is and saying, far out. Well, what am I going to do with this one? Now, this is where it becomes very delicate. Because as you keep flipping these realities, is this too heavy, or can you hear me? I'm sorry it's so heavy, but it'll be clear enough. I'll get lighter after a while. It's just, I don't know why. It's whatever this vibration. When you are busy identifying with your suffering, you are a tremendously socially concerned human being, because you look around and you think of all the suffering and your empathy is very great. When you shift these channels a little bit and you ultimately look up and you begin to see all of the forms of the universe in perfect harmony with one another, and you begin to experience the perfection of the flow, including the suffering, the violence, the starvation, etc. At that moment, you look at the universe and you say, from your great height, high in the Himalayas, you say, it is all perfect. Now, if you stop in that reality, you can be very, very high in the Buddha mind, but you forgot the bleeding heart of the Christ. The liberated being is the being who simultaneously is looking up and seeing the perfection of it all, and looking down and seeing the blood on the snow and seeing the suffering. The balance is that you, as an incarnated being in North Miami Beach High School, must honor your incarnation in order to be free. You cannot deny it, and your incarnation is as a human being living among many human beings, most of whom are suffering unbearably. That balance, the balance of the Buddha mind, of seeing the emptiness of forms and the perfection, and at the same moment, keeping your heart wide open to the suffering in the universe around you, and using your incarnation to alleviate suffering. That is the balance that is the statement of liberation. If you get so high that you're walking down the street so high that somebody trips and falls and you don't bother to help them up because, after all, it's perfect, you forgot God in form. If you're so busy helping the person up on the street that you forget at that moment the perfection of the entire dance, including the fall and the helping, you forgot God in the formless state. It's a tough path to have the strength to keep it together in form and formless, to relieve suffering and to work with suffering. See, how you deal with suffering depends on the level of consciousness. Like the example that I've used before, if somebody comes to you and says, I am a yogi, I would like to do a fast and I am healthy, and I say, all right, fast for 9 days. And they come to me at 7 days and they say, I'm doing fine. I say, great, go right ahead, fast some more. If I then walk out on the street and somebody comes up to me and says, hey man, I haven't eaten in 7 days, you got a quarter. I don't say to him, you're doing fine, proceed, right? There's the quarter. Because his level of consciousness, he's busy suffering. The other being is using the suffering to awaken. It's the same thing, they both didn't eat for 7 days. One person is busy being the person who didn't eat for 7 days, and the other person is being the person who's going to God. No judgment. One person's at 4:30, one person's at 9 o'clock. You don't judge that a person that's 40 is better than a person that's 20, they're just 20 years older. The beings around you represent different ages of incarnation. Your parents, your children, your brothers and sisters, your friends, all different. All different. For a moment, you might meet in the journey and then spread apart. No matter how hard you try to grab their hand, it can't happen because you are at different levels of the dance. You have different work to do.
Held by him for him to look down on me and to love me. And I pictured that happening, and it felt very good. And it was so funny this morning. The next minute, I pictured myself going home from here and trying to make that happen, and it not being able to happen with my father. And I hated him. It was instant hate.
Recognizing your feeling of wanting to be understood and loved and held by him, and his ability to do that, are quite two different things. That your denial of that feeling of wanting that, that's what blocks you. Once you know you have that feeling, then you can begin to hear who he is and experience with some compassion his predicament of being unable to express his love, or to be unable to be the kind of father that you might want. It's as if once you know that you're beautiful, acceptable, then when other people don't like you, it begins to you see it as their problem, not yours anymore. Until you have allowed your own beauty to be, you never see it as their problem, you always see it as yours. And all paranoia you take back in on yourself. So the first step of the game is what you started with, which is acknowledging your desire for love. As long as you're straight with your feelings, then if people can't fulfill them, sure, you'll go through self-pity and anger, and you have to be honest with those too. But you'll begin to appreciate that they're just doing their karma. They're stuck in what they're stuck in. And you'll sit with your feelings and allow them to be who they have to be. And your life will be that of somebody who needs love and doesn't get it. And you'll go through self-pity, and then you'll say, well, that's the way it is. And here we are. But to make believe you don't want it because you're not getting it, there's where the trap is. Can you hear that? Yeah. One dies as one lives. Mahatma Gandhi walks into his garden for a press conference. He gets shot, and at the moment he's shot, all he says is Ram, just the name of God. He just has time. He says the name of Ram as he goes, because he's so already with God through his life's work that the moment of transition of body to not body is just another moment in which he's with God. So once that starts to fall into place and feel right to us, then really the essence of a dying retreat becomes the essence of a living retreat. And then the question is how you use the experiences, the moment-to-moment experiences of your life, as a way to become optimally conscious, to be optimally in the spirit or with God. And so then you start to examine the various components of life in order to bring them into this same awareness that we're just talking about now. Because what you find is that you can agree with everything I've said, but the big chunks of life are totally unconscious. That you say, oh yes, I understand this, I understand what my life is about, but I'm really angry at so-and-so. And somehow that anger and that relationship never comes into the rest of it. It just stays in its little compartment. And what happens to a relationship when you understand that the meaning of the events and the experiences of your life is to awaken or to live in the spirit or to be fully conscious or with God or your own true being? And you say, yes, but I have this relationship because I need love, or I have this relationship because But if you push this and push it, you see that ultimately everything must go into this same stew, and you have relationships in order to awaken, and you have relationships in order to live in the spirit and to be with God, and to awaken out of the illusion of your own separateness. And that's the real essence of relationship. It's the vehicle for awakening out of the illusion of separateness. And when you understand the integration of this higher wisdom with the daily life events, you begin to see how relationships are a form of devotional or dualistic. They're a form of yoga. They're a form of coming into union, which is what yoga means. Now, what you see in other human beings is very, very much affected by your motivation and by your perception of yourself and by your own preoccupations. If you are busy, if I say to you, who are you? And you say, I am somebody who is dying, then you will tend to see other people in terms of who's living and who's dying. If you are somebody who doesn't like your body image, you are inclined to look at other people's body image. If you are somebody who is preoccupied with your own personality, with your own depression, for example, you're inclined to look at other people in terms of their happiness. Why can't I be happy like she is? If you have a very judging mind in which you're judging yourself continually, then you see other people as judging you all the time. You tend to project outward what is familiar to you, which is the way you look at the universe. You assume other people are looking at the universe the same way. So that if you are preoccupied with your sexual desire system, and that colors your perception because it locks you in all the time, you will see other people as thinking that too. And by the same token, if you think that you are God and you see God in yourself, that's what you'll see in other people. I recall when I was with Maharaji, I felt so inadequate and so unworthy that I would continually say to him, how can you send me away? How can you send me back to the United States where people are going to want things of me and I can't fulfill them? I'm not a dharmic person. I'm a totally impure person. I've got all this lust and this power trippiness and this insecurity. And what are you doing? You're just sending me into the lion's mouth and you're giving me no protection. You haven't given me anything to protect myself from my own impurities. I said, the worst thing I can imagine is that I can do damage to another human being, that I can do stuff that will create karma by creating suffering. And I said, I'm just too impure, Maharaji. And Maharaji at that moment looked at me, and he looked at me like he was looking at a specimen. And he looked at my hair and my head, and he looked at my eyes, and he looked, and he came up really close, and he looked like this. And then he had me turn around. And I turned around, he looked in my ears, and he looked, and he looked, and he looked, and he did this whole routine. It was a Marx Brothers routine, and he did the whole thing. And when I got all the way back around, he looked, and he looked very surprised, and he said, I don't see any impurities. And of course, my first reaction was that silly old man. Because obviously, any fool can see my impurities. But you see, any fool sees their own foolishness. And what he saw was his own godness. He didn't see the impurities. It was my preoccupation with my impurities, which was feeding the whole situation, not his. He was saying, maybe there's another way to look at who you are. That seemed to be the essence of the message. And if you are preoccupied with power, as I have been most of my life, then you will see relationships in power terms, and you'll be afraid of being controlled in every relationship, or being suppressed, or being dependent. Those are all power-related things. And that's because your preoccupation is with power because of your own feelings of inadequacy or impotence or whatever. The way the mind works is often to develop concepts and then to live within the concepts rather than in the immediate experience. So that you develop a concept of who you are and who another person is. And then you live in terms of the relationship between the concepts rather than in the immediate experience that exists between two human beings. For example, if you experience yourself as being a wise person and somebody else as being unwise, and you're caught in that label, then even if they say something wise, you can't hear it because you're so caught in your labeling. We've got to find behind all the symbology that there are living, breathing incarnations of God. We've got to see through the symbology. We can only see through the symbology when our attachments to those symbologies are cut through, when we've gotten rid of those attachments in ourselves. And if you need those things, then you're attached to them. For example, if you need to be a nurse, if you're a nurse and you need to be a nurse, then you need to have patience. And then you load somebody into that symbolic package of patience in order to satisfy your need to be a nurse. If you need to be helpful, then you need people who are helpless. If you need to be sadistic, you need people who are masochistic. To the extent that you identify with any social role whatsoever, then you will seek out somebody to enter into a symbiotic relationship. You scratch my neurosis and I'll scratch yours. You let me be